Hey everybody, and welcome to The Musician's Musician. I am your host, Nick Costa, and today we have a really great conversation with my pal, Remy Morritt. Remy is a phenomenal musician and songwriter who has drummed for such amazing artists as Lizzy McAlpine, Lee Hutson, Fen Lily, Tiny Habits, and many, many more. I've been a fan of Remy's work for a while, and there's probably a good chance that you have been too. I met Remy when we both went to see our mutual pal, Nate Van Fleet, who is also a phenomenal songwriter and drummer. He played a show at the Silver Lake Lounge a few years back, and we've kept in touch ever since. I even got to see him on tour with Lee Hutson, who I'd been dying to see ever since I fell in love with Beginners back in 2020. He has only done cooler and cooler stuff since then, so I would implore you to keep up with him. Not only is he an otherworldly drummer, but everything that he works on is cooler than the last thing. Remy decided he wanted to talk about Canadian songwriter Daniel Romano for this episode, who is an artist that I wasn't super familiar with. However, as we discussed in this episode, I really fell in love with Daniel's music. There's such a wide range of sounds happening between all of Daniel's albums, and it was really fun to dive in and just break everything down. Also, just real quick, before we get into the episode, I'm about to release the second single from my new record next Friday. This one is called Cherry Blossom, and I think it's the loudest one on the record. It features the also phenomenal JT Bates on drums. Man, what a drummers episode this one is. I'm just really, really excited to get that one out. And I hope you like it. So listen for that. And that also means that next week's episode is going to be out on Thursday instead of Friday. So with all of that said, let's get into it. We're doing great. All right. Well, I am back with Remy Morritt. Remy.
Hey.
Thank you for being a musician's musician.
I'm glad that you think that's what I am. I love it.
Now, for those listening, we've already done this before, but due to a very silly error on my end, we have to redo it, and that is word for word how Remy responded last time.
Oh, is that what I said the last time?
Yeah, you didn't. I thought you did that on purpose.
No. No, I just I guess I only have a few phrases that I know how to say.
You're consistent is what you are. It's that's all it is.
We can A-B the first one and this one and see if I say the same stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, and we are going to be talking about the amazing music of Daniel Romano. But before we get into that, last we talked was a couple weeks ago, but like what's new with you musically? I know you were like working on some tunes. Are there any updates or?
Yeah. I was working on some tunes, still working on tunes, some of the same ones. But I've been trying to get my studio sort of dialed in sound wise, and I've got a buddy that moved in and we've kind of meshed our gear together. And he's an amazing guitar player, songwriter. So we've been collaborating a little bit, trying to get the space looking nicer, and so getting better sounds, trying to get my remote recording dialed in.
Sure.
But yeah, other than that, I've just been playing in town, playing drums for a lot of different artists and just trying to stay busy.
Yeah, I've been seeing you've been real busy with shows and doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so this is awesome. My first weekend that I get to kind of hang out and not do anything, which is cool. Man. So I've been enjoying it. Yesterday, we had some friends over. We played Monopoly. Had an all-day game of Monopoly.
Yeah, it's not like a quick game of Monopoly ever.
No, it's kind of like the Risk of
capitalism,
capitalist-based board games. It was fun. We had a good time. It's been nice to have like a couple days off, but other than that, I just kind of working on some of my own music, and I hatched this idea of recording like an improvised drum like solo just project. I'm kind of have been writing down some ideas of how I want to go about doing that. So I have so many drums, and I want to record them all and hear what they sound like under mics, and I improvise all the time when I practice. So
Yeah.
I was like, man, I could just, what if I came up with some cool ideas and just put them onto tracks and, tried some stuff out to tape or whatever. So I'm that might be the next thing that I work on.
Really cool. So I'm curious to know I guess you don't know because it's going to be improv, but what do you have in mind for that? Is it going to be like kind of a more like ambient thing, or is it like what direction do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it could kind of go any direction. I think sometimes I like to let the drums sort of inform the music. And so like setting things up differently, putting different drums in places where they're not normally, or where I'm not used to having them, different cymbal heights and configurations, like basically forcing myself to like prepare the drums in such a way so that it causes me to like do different gestures around the instrument. That's kind of the first way that I can hack my brain into doing something different. And then from there I can kind of come up with the idea. I was like, okay, well, there's like a motif because I have these sort of drums arranged in this way. I can kind of like, I don't know, I can record it, or I can record it around this one idea, or I can sort of formulate the whole sort of piece over one idea or whatever. So that's kind of my first thought about it. But I think like, I love it when things are not too heavy handed. Like, I don't want to just get up on there and just like rip, and just like play all the notes that I know how to play. I'd love to try to do something musical. And all my favorite drummers are not showy drummers. They're very like, they listen, and I want to try to do something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a new idea. I'm kind of hashing out some of the ideas like live
you
right now.
That's great. That's awesome.
But yeah. So yeah.
Oh man, I'm really excited to hear where that goes. That's really cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, speaking of really tasteful drummers, Daniel Romano's music.
Yeah.
It's a good segue. I feel like his tunes always have really tasteful drummings and or drummings. That's the phrase. Drum parts.
Yeah.
Not too showy, really tasteful, just accents the song.
Very musical. The parts are really clear usually. That's one of the things I love. I mean, among the millions of other things I love about his music, his drumming, I think, is like, it really stands out to me.
Right.
But it wasn't really the drumming that got me into it. But,
no, I wouldn't imagine.
Talking about the drumming, like specifically, especially on like Modern Pressure, that record that, I sent to you first, like a lot of those parts are very, I don't know, they're very like 60s inspired, and they're very musical. They have a lot to do with the lyrics and the song structures and stuff, and I think they sort of make the songs, and they keep the excitement going too. And I think he just has an amazing ear for parts and putting that stuff together. And it's just one of the many examples.
yeah, for sure. Do you? Obviously we talked about this last time, but I actually kind of forgot. Do you remember the first time that you heard Daniel Romano's music?
Yes. I had a buddy that was a friend of my older sister's. He's a guitar player in town named Ryan Richter. And he's a very interesting guy. He is very he has a very eclectic taste in music, and he also has a very, the way that he sees music is, he has his really strong opinions, and he's really his convictions are and it's one of the things I really like about him. And he's just like, dude, you have to listen to this person. It's like, it'll change your life. And he's usually right. And I remember when I was first looking at moving to LA from Seattle, I hit him up because I was like, here's like a, quintessential LA fellow who I know. And I was like, show me around. Like, I want to see some shows. I want to do some stuff. And so we drove around in his Prius, and he was playing me all kinds of stuff, like stuff I'd never heard before, like playing me like cool, Rycooter records. I had not really gotten into Rycooter yet. And we were listening to country music, and he was like, oh, I got to show you Daniel Romano. And he showed me Daniel Romano, and how he showed it to me was he gave me a progression of, he showed me, I believe, something from one of his first records, one of his country records, and then he showed me something from an album called Mosey, which is a little bit more like kind of in between country rock and into the psychedelia sort of thing that Modern Pressure eventually gets into. And then he showed me Modern Pressure. And I remember at first being kind of like, I was like, I grew up listening to country music. I loved country music, but I kind of was like sort of sick of it. And when he was playing it for me, I was like, yeah, this is cool, whatever.
Yeah.
But there was something about like Modern Pressure that, like, I remember sitting, he sent it to me in a playlist after we like had stopped hanging out. He was like, dude, you have to listen to this playlist. Like, it'll change your life. And so I was like, okay. So I put it on, and I remember I was trying to like, I don't know why I was like listening to music while reading a book, but I don't normally do that. But I remember I was staying with a friend in LA, and I was like really wanting to move there, and the sun was coming in to the room. And I just remember listening to Modern Pressure and just being like, oh my God, like, this is it. Like, this is what I want to hear. Like, this is the type of music that makes sense to me. Yeah. You know, it touches on all the things that I love about the Beatles and all the things I love about like 60s, 70s music and recording techniques that I love, tones that I love, and then just like song structure and the cleverness of the lyrics, and also kind of the sort of, I don't know, the pictures that he paints in his lyrics, especially on that record. I was just like, there's just some really, really succinct, beautiful love songs and some really beautiful just ideas that he hashes out. And like he, plays most, if not all, the instruments on the record.
Right.
And it's like, I love like a well-rounded idea like that. And it sent me down this rabbit hole of digging into Daniel Romano. And yeah.
And what a rabbit hole it is too. I mean,
it is. Yeah.
Like when you brought up, that you wanted to talk about him, and then we talked about Modern Pressure, and I listened to Modern Pressure and I was like, yes, this is great. What else can I figure out? And then I went right, because I generally just go from like the very start and then kind of view the progression from there. And so when you start at Modern Pressure and then you go back to working for the Music Man, it's a little jarring. Like you're just like, oh, he was like
completely,
he was like a, like a classic country, like almost like a Justin Townes Earl kind of guy. Like, that like classic country resurgence of the 2010s, I suppose. Yeah.
I read an interview with one of his like frequent collaborators is this pedal steel player, and he lives in that area in Canada where they live, St. Catharines. Yeah. And just kind of outside of Toronto. And he was like, yeah, I remember Daniel Romano first like hit me up to play on some country tunes that he had written. And what he had said at that time was, at the time Daniel was playing mostly like punk music, and him and his brother were like in punk bands, and he had kind of done this sort of like character change and decided he wanted to start making country music. And what's interesting is it's like he also does the punk thing really amazingly too, because he has this side project called Ancient Shapes. That's kind of like I don't know if you've checked that out.
I haven't. I didn't know about that.
The hole goes deeper and deeper with Daniel Romano. And we're going off on all these different tangents, but like I thought that was interesting because like he decided he wanted to commit himself to doing a different thing, and it ended up, obviously taking him into this direction that I really love. But it's cool to kind of see the origin, where he started. But like, I don't know, I do wish that there was a way to find some of the records or collaborations that he did like before even his, like what would be considered his first record. Yeah. I'd be curious to know. But yeah, and so, since then, like the progression has been pretty amazing. Yeah.
It's drastic.
Yeah. It is pretty interesting. It's like a new statement every time there's a new record. It's like a new idea, a new direction, but it still like feels linear in a way. I remember I took a long car ride with going to a music festival, like, and we were all sharing, like everyone share a song, like, we're all like, cause it was a long ass drive, and it was like, okay, everyone gets to share a song. And I was like, okay, I'm sharing 2 songs just because I want you guys to hear the difference. This is the same person. And I played him a song off Mosey, and then I played a song off I think off Modern Pressure or maybe off of Finally Free. I can't remember. And the difference was so stark,
Yeah.
just in like the timbre of the production, like just even just the sort of the vibe of the whole thing was completely different. And I had a hard time convincing people that it was the same person.
Yeah.
But
I think
what's
that's
funny,
understandable, you know?
yeah, and what's funny to me though is like it does, like if you do get yourself kind of deep into his music, you see what the through line is eventually.
You
once you
do.
kind of get into it.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool.
Honestly, like one of the things that is consistent, and like I don't know really how to describe this, but it all has like this country sensibility as for the songwriting, not necessarily like the sonic approach for anything like that.
Yeah.
But like there's like the way that it hooks you is always kind of like country like. Like I always think that a really good country song is kind of circular. This is getting so heady, but like it's a little circular, right? Like it'll start like if you look at Loretta Lynn, Don't Come Home Drinking, it's, you know, it starts off here and then it kind of takes you on this journey for the verse. You know, you thought I'd be waiting up since you came home last night, and then been out with all the boys and you ended up half tight. Liquor and love just don't mix. Leave the bottle or me behind. Don't come home a drinking with loving on your mind. And then, you know,
yeah,
the chorus kicks in. Don't come home a drinking with loving on your mind. I'm not going to recite the whole song, but like it always feels like it brings you, it like starts off at like a really understandable starting point and then like brings you to like the point of the song pretty quick and then like guides you through the rest of it so naturally and just like beautifully. And so like with his country songs, obviously they do that, but like when you get into like his psychedelic stuff or even like the Prague song that's like 20 minutes long with Danny Carey, like it hooks you in and it like brings you on this journey that's so like natural and it doesn't feel forced by any means. And like,
yeah. And well, and like country music, I mean, one of the things I think we discussed before, that one of the things I love about just country music, classic country music, is like the sort of succinct, like astute thing about that most of these hooks have that are like, you know, I'm conveying an emotion to you, I'm conveying an idea, and I'm going to say it in a way that's really relatable and like really kind of sweet and understandable. And I love country music for that purpose or for that sole reason, because it's like it's unlike any other music. You know, I mean, every music tries to sort of, you know, be relatable or be something that people can understand. But I think country music, for the most part, it has the cleverest way of being relatable, if that makes sense.
It does.
And it has the cleverest way of painting an interesting picture that is like, you know, a lot of the chord changes on a lot of country songs like do end. A lot of the motions are pretty much the same, and there is a lot of like textural continuity between a lot of different artists. You know, save for their you know, vocal style, but you can name a lot of country songs that have 1, 4, and 5. You know, it's like, but they all are very different because they all tell completely different nuance, like specific stories. I think Daniel Romano does a really amazing job with his lyrics because they sort of touch into the psychedelic and into a kind of like a, you know, sort of a like a nebulous world of imagination.
Yes.
But then they also can kind of come down to earth, and you can really relate to them on a deeply personal level, because it's like, oh, this is a song about like a guy who, you know, like there's a song on one of his like COVID era records.
Yes.
I think we should talk about that too.
We need to. Yeah.
It's called Paper Rose. I think it's on Visions of the Higher Dream.
Yes.
And that song is beautiful because it's like, my understanding of it is it's this picture of, you know, the story that I'm understanding is that he's a guy who has like loved and lost, and what he's talking about is like, I want to have a love that is manufactured to be exactly what I want, but the one thing it can't do is like go away. It can't wither like a paper rose. So it's like it's perfect in every way, and I've molded it to be this thing that I want, and it can't, like, my love can't leave me because it's not something that can wither.
Yeah.
And the song's called Paper Rose, and it's like it's just this interesting idea. It's like everyone's felt that feeling of like, a shitty breakup or whatever. I mean, like, you could write a song about like, oh, she left me or whatever, but it's like, how do I come at this human experience by coming up with this really interesting kind of picture painting? And I love, there's something so beautiful about that idea. Like, you can literally think of a paper rose, and even that's kind of a beautiful sort of idea, but
for sure,
the fact that there's a deeper meaning to it, I think, is just even,
that's really great. And that kind of is like a country thing, right? So like, there's obviously like the really basic country songs that they just kind of spell it out as plain as day. But then there's also songs where it's like really clever, where like, Hello Walls by Willie, where he's like, is that a tear in the corner of your window pane or something like that, in the corner of your pane or something like that. Although I did hear an interview where somebody was just like asking him about Hello Walls, and like that specific line, like, that was pretty clever how you said like pain when he's talking to the window, and he's just like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
And I love that song, the Farron Young version of that song, so much, because they do like that sort of Jordan Ayers thing, like the really kind of deep background vocals, and he's like, hello walls, and then they're like, hello, and like, and they sort of answer back to him. Like, I love the production of that. It's just like such an interesting, it's like you can sort of like imagine him like sitting in a room, and like the walls are singing back to him. He's going crazy because he
the Willie version on And Then I Wrote has that too, and I think that's so funny. I think it's so good.
It's an amazing song.
It is.
Yeah.
I love the really early Willie stuff. I mean, just like early country music from that era in general, I think is really special. Like Patsy Cline or.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that Patsy Cline stuff too. A lot of the Jim Reeves, Patsy Cline era, like the early '60s. What is interesting about that music to me is like, and I'm sure there are experts on this that could correct me if I'm wrong, but there was kind of a radio sort of doo-wop thing that was happening at that time, and that music was kind of touching on some of that stuff. And I do think it's really beautiful, but what I think is interesting is because that's what started happening, there was almost like a counterculture in country music where like people were like, okay, this stuff is too like soft, like we need to pick up the pace. And that's kind of where you end up getting some of the Bakersfield country, that like the Buck Owens stuff that I really love. And like the Merle Haggard sort of like, and it's I dig that. I sort of dig that as like an answer to that stuff.
Yeah, the second people started being like, I don't know, Nashville's pretty cookie cutter. Yeah, let's just see what else they got out there.
Yeah, I love it, and I do think like I do hear a lot of that like influence in the Daniel Romano stuff,
big time. Yeah,
especially the stuff where he's like really focused in on like making a country record. There's some really cool stuff in there.
I was actually, before we got on, I was listening to Content to Point the Way.
Yes, dude.
Oh my,
I love that record.
God. So that is, for those who don't know, he put out a whole bunch of records in 2020 during COVID, exclusively on Bandcamp, so you can't really find them on streaming services. But Content to Point the Way is like his country record, I guess. Because it is very, very country, but it's unlike his other country records where they're like more traditional. This is just like, I don't know. It feels like he took all of the exploration that he was doing from like, like Modern Pressure, or even a little bit of like the Mosey stuff. And even like Finally Free, which you got me to listen to, and I love that. Like there's a weirdness to those songs.
Yeah,
Positive
those songs
connotation.
yeah. Well, some of those songs, I don't know about all of them, but I do know that a lot of a lot of those songs are from a long time ago, and there are videos of him playing them at open mics or in country shows solo, and then he plays them kind of there's a song Little Shirley Melrose, which I love, and there's a video of him I think from like 2012 playing that song wearing a cowboy hat,
No
and
way.
he's playing it really slow, and it's kind of like a sort of a tongue in cheek like country ballad, but that Content to Point the Ray record I think is like it's with his live band, which is like his drummer, and he has a different live band now, but at the time it was I saw that band play a few times, the band before the current one, and I mean they were just like they just blew the fucking roof off every time I saw them, and so that album captures that energy. He also has like it's sort of like a pseudo live album. I mean, it is, I think part of it is live, but I think some of it is pieced together called Okay Wow. That is that iteration of the band, the same one that's on Content to Point the Way.
Sure.
And it's like, I mean, they're just so high energy and it's so much fun. And so those songs are super, super clever and like really sweet. And you can sing along to them really easily. Like he just really knows how to write a melody.
Man, he does.
That song. There's one song on that record that I love. It's did you get as far as the one where it's they haven't got a word for that yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
And I can't understand how somebody can write a song like this where it's like, I wonder if he wrote it backwards or something, but it was like he like all of these verses where he's describing things. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what this is called. Like, a little bit of sugar that you eat with a stick. And then like, oh, like there's a man by the sea that lives in a cave.
Yeah.
You shout him your name and he says back the same. And then at the end of the song, he like recounts all of these things that he was describing. And they're all just simple things that we know about, like pixie sticks, echoes on the bay. Like, it's just all like, but it flows together in such a way where it's like, how could you have possibly come up with this? It's just it's brilliant.
It's so clever.
Yeah,
I think is the thing I mean, it really is kind of like how did you think of that? And he does it so consistently, and he's put out so much music where it's like all of it is like that.
Yeah,
I actually think that. So I have like a group text thread with like a bunch of my old bandmates that were like also like best buds. We'll always send each other music, and I feel like every time I send them, I listen to a Daniel Romano album and I'll send it to them and be like, I think this is the best one. Every single time. I literally just sent them Dandelion, and I was like, I think this is the best one. And then I put on Content to Point the Way. I was like, I should have waited.
Yeah, well, and then, Kissing the Foe is also unbelievable. You should listen to that one. There's some really interesting ideas on that one.
Okay.
I mean, I love Visions of the Higher Dream. Isn't it like that one blew me away too. A Dandelion always kind of stands out to me though. The thing I love about that one is there's like that instrumental motif. That sort of a mellotron, like do 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 do. Like he does that throughout, and he sort of like extrapolates on that idea as it goes through. And I love, really cool. And it kind of sounds like he certainly knows how he did it, but it sounds like it was recorded to tape. It has that sort of just like that nice, beautiful, saturated sound that you get from recording to, like, maybe it's not a 4-track, but it sounds pretty retro to me, which I love. It does.
Yeah, it's got this like the mellotron adds, it's hard to not think of the Beatles whenever you have like a good mellotron with like that style of production that he's got going on. Yeah. But it also has like this like, I don't know, big star sheen to it, where it's almost like, it's like a power pop gold. I don't know. There's not much like it.
It's also beautifully catcy too. But without being heavy-handed,
No,
I do feel like music that sort of like, what am I trying to say? Music that is catchy just for the sake of being catchy, often it kind of has to hit you over the head with how catchy it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, one of the things I love about Daniel Romano, among other songwriters who can do this, he finds a way to like hook you into a story and an idea, and obviously like a melody and a chord progression. Everything about the song makes you want to listen to it more. It has that thing that's catchy, but it's not. But it is in and of itself like a very interesting artistic, statement.
Mm-hmm.
And then it does prove that those two things can be like, they don't have to be mutually exclusive, where you can have something that is relatable and cool, and also like advances the craft, whatever it is that we do that we love so much. Like, I mean, maybe that's the obvious thing, but I think that it is really impressive to be like, okay, this is like unlike anything I've ever heard, and I want to keep listening to it, and that was my experience with Daniel Romano. Like, Finally Free, I think, is like, I love that record because it's I would say one of his more experimental ones. I think like he was really like going for something interesting there.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to sort of tell what the songs are about. I think like the meaning sort of gets lost on me. I'm admittedly not the greatest like reader of lyrics or like understander of lyrics.
I'm not usually either.
Yeah.
And like my partner thinks that's usually pretty funny because like I'll put on a song and be like, oh man, this is great. And she'll just be like, do you know what they're saying here? And I'll be like, maybe I should have paid attention to that. It's a great melody.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, but I mean,
do you find like as a songwriter, like do you feel like, I don't know, how does that affect your writing of lyrics?
Yeah. I mean, I'm such a sucker for melody. Like it really is something that I adore in like a very real way. So I think if I hit a good melody, I'm of the mindset of like the words kind of will follow that.
Sure.
And as far as like kind of being influenced by other people's lyrics, there's like always things like when I actually sit down and like read the lyrics or really listen to something and something catches my ear, it's usually like something that's like pretty clever or something that makes me laugh or like something that is like the saddest thing I've ever heard or like, something really powerful that stands out. Then I'll be like, okay, noted. But as far as like how I write lyrics, it's usually like what words came through that melody to me. And then like there's usually like a phrase that sticks out and like I stick to that. Like, yeah, okay. I'm going to follow that. So like for example, I wrote a song just a couple days ago and I really loved it and I loved like the guitar movements and everything like that. It's very unusual for me and this melody kind of came with it, and the thing that stuck to it was the phrase "Robin's egg blue," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So let's like, I don't know why specifically, but I was like, "Oh, Robin's egg blue, sure." And then I followed that, and then made a whole song around like my relationship to essentially this color, which sounds weird. It'll make sense.
No. I mean, I think that's amazing. Like, I think that's a really cool way to do it. I kind of do a similar thing when I'm writing. It's like, it's like the melody and the melody and the timbre of like the words that you're saying sort of are tantamount to the meaning.
Yeah.
And it becomes more important to, I don't know, to like say the right words phonetically. Like I want the phonetic sounds that like work with this particular point of the melody.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I think I think it's a cool way to do it. I do wonder like how other people, I often am curious how other people do it because that's the only way that ever makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know there's people who like kind of just like free associate and then just kind of like, I think it's like a Bon Iver thing is like, he'll just kind of sing words, just whatever comes to his head. And then like, he'll kind of like mumble essentially, and then like find the word that is like the closest to what he mumbled and then put that in there.
Interesting. That sort of tracks, I think.
Yeah, a little bit. But like for me, yeah, it's always just like if there's a melody there, like I'm sitting on like a couple of songs where like I love the melody so much, but the right words haven't found it yet. And I always kind of think like, you know, I don't want to just write something to fit it because it won't feel right. Like if you had, you know, if Paul McCartney wrote The Long and Winding Road, but then like didn't have the lyrics, and so he just wrote a song about like a hot dog or something like that, that would be a little disappointing.
Sure. Yeah.
The Long and Winding Dog.
It sounds delicious, actually.
Yeah, I'm pretty hungry, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because I feel like you can make or break a song with lyrics. I wonder if there is a line that you can toe where it's like, you know, it kind of doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I do think that there are songs that, again, like the same point with the catchiness thing. It's like there are songs that also kind of have, like, they feel like they need to beat you over the head with the meaning of the song. And I don't like that either. It's like like, at least for me, there's this really, really thin line that songwriters walk on, like, where it's like, yeah, it has to be something that's listenable and interesting. It has to be like a new thing, like it has to be a new statement. And it also, like, it has to make sense to me, I think. Yeah. You know, and going back to Daniel Romano, I think like he never really misses on that stuff, you know, like all of that stuff really makes sense. And even when like I don't quite understand the lyrics, I'm intrigued to know more. I kind of like stick my head deeper into it to figure out what is it that he's trying to say. Like, you know, Finally Free is that record is full of those moments for me where I'm like, dude, what is he saying? Like, is he creating a new like religion here? Or like, what is this? You know? And I remember when that record came out, because I was anticipating another kind of Modern Pressure, and what we got was something completely different. And I'm thankful that it was something completely different, because it really, I was like, man, this guy really knows what he's doing, and he really has a vision, and I don't know what he's going to do next, which is a kind of a beautiful thing with an artist. Like I sort of liken him to a David Bowie type or like a Prince type, you know, but like with less, obviously like less theatrics and more like kind of artistic focus. And I don't know, I think it's really, really interesting that he can do that. And then when the COVID records were coming out, then it was like, it seemed like he was kind of unleashing like a backlog of interesting stuff. Yeah. But I thought it was interesting that he purposely didn't put that stuff out on Spotify. And I wondered if it was because it was not part of the linear thing that he was sort of going for. It was more just kind of like, well, these are records that I made before that, like, if you're a fan of mine, you can check them out.
Sure.
And which made it all the more special for me, because I was like, every time I get a notification that a new Daniel Romano record dropped, I was like, oh, I like dropped everything and checked it out. And each one was a triumph for me. I was just like, this is like, even some of the ones that were kind of not up my alley musically, like, you know, like there's one called Spider Bite. It's a little bit harder. Like Super Pollen is like almost like a prog record that he did like with his brother. And like, I love that one too. It's just like everything about it's just like, I love it. I just love the amount of output that this guy has is truly amazing.
Yeah, the output and quality, I think, is really rare. You know, like there are people who are really, really prolific and will put out a stinker every now and then. You know? Of
course,
you know? Yeah. But like, I don't feel like he has any. I feel like you can kind of pick any Daniel Romano record and it's an enjoyable experience. It's different every time. But it's always good. I'm always surprised at how good every single Daniel Romano record is.
What would you say is one that, like, I don't know. I've introduced you to Daniel Romano. I'm curious to see, like, which ones do you really stand out for you as the ones that...
Yeah. Dandelion is really, I think that's a really special record.
It's really cool.
And it's wild to me that is like, just like a Bandcamp, like, I don't want to say like a throwaway thing, but it seems like he just kind of like tossed it up and it was just like, I don't know, there you go.
Yeah, it was one of the ones it was like, it was like, there was with Finally Free, I remember that record was coming out and he was promoting it because it was coming out on his label, and it was like, it was a whole thing. There was a bunch of press and they did singles and stuff. And then when COVID hit and he released the first one, which was Visions of a Higher Dream. Yeah. Like that was the first in the string of those. It was like, there was no lead up or anything. It was just like, boom, here's a record, like listen to it. And I was like, whoa. And I remember listening to it, and I remember it kind of scratched the itch that I had. I wanted another Modern Pressure kind of, not that Finally Freeze, but didn't satisfy, but it was a different thing. And I was like, oh, I wanted to hear more of this kind of idea. And so I loved that record. And then every record after that, it was the same thing. It was just like, no pomp and circumstance. Here you go. Yeah. Another batch of songs. But it was cool because they were very obviously records. And it wasn't just like, I pieced all these songs together. Like they all sounded like they were recorded at the same studio. Like at least within, I mean, I'm sure he has his places that he works out of, but each one sounded sonically cohesive.
Very cohesive.
And it was like, oh, he made a record, then he decided, man, I'm not going to put this out. I'll put it out later or whatever.
And it's
like,
wild.
I couldn't imagine making a record and then being like, yeah, maybe we'll put it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I could understand a song, going over there, but
yeah, Dandelion and Content to Point the Way both are records where like I listened to those and I was just like, man, I would kill to make a record like this.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding?
It's crazy.
And those are just like, just on Bandcamp.
Yeah. I love it. He doesn't do the thing that a lot of artists do where it's like, there is a level at which artists like have to do things because they want to be more famous. And so they have to start interacting with their fans differently. They have to start interacting with social media a certain way. And I feel like with Daniel Romano, it's like, unless you're someone who lives in St. Catharines, like, or in Welland, Ontario, like in that zone, like you would really only hear of him by word of mouth, maybe through a Spotify playlist or whatever, but he's not going on Instagram or TikTok or whatever being like, what's up guys? It's me, Daniel Romano, like back in the studio, like he doesn't do any of that stuff. Yeah. And it doesn't really, they obviously promote his records and stuff, but he still has this mystique about him. That is, and he's sort of a mysterious cat. And I've met other musicians from that area that were like, we talked about Daniel Romano and they're like, yeah, I don't really see him around. Like, he's just like a guy that is like, he's just but they're all in agreement that he's like a genius. Who, like,
sure. Yeah.
Has this crazy
absolutely.
output. And they're just like, yeah, we like, who knows what this guy's up to, and I just love the mysteriousness about it. Like he came and was playing in LA a couple years ago and I went to see him, and of course, like, it was one of the best shows I've ever seen. And then he was like standing outside after the show, like smoking cigarettes with his wife. And I was like, I could have gone up and been like, what's up, dude? But he's just like another level where I just like, kind of just like, don't really want to meet him. Cause it's just, his music is so special. I just love that it sort of exists. And, I'm sure he's a perfectly nice person, but he's just such an interesting, mysterious cat.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've kind of had both ends of the spectrum, right? Where there was like somebody I really admired and I had like met them and I had a really pleasant experience. But I've also had the moments where like, I don't know, I've gone up and just been like, hey man, I'm a huge fan or something like that. And like got a really weird vibe. Yeah. And then couldn't really approach the music the same way ever since, like there's been a few, and if you love somebody's music so much, it's not really worth it to risk that. Like it really is kind of a coin toss,
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I'm sure like, I always wonder that too, like having played with artists who like have followings, I do see what that is like to have people come up and be like, hey, I love your music. Like, I think to an extent it's pretty enjoyable, but I'm obviously not one of these people, so I've not really experienced this, but I do feel like after a while, it does get a little old, I think. It's nice to hear people appreciate your music, but like when people come up and it's like, your music means a lot to me, it's like, that's cool. I appreciate that. But you hear that from like 20 different people. I can imagine that after a while, you're kind of like, okay, click, cool, thanks. That's enough. and like, and I kind of just can't blame, I can't blame people for being a little bit like miffed by that, but it also keeps me from doing it. Like, even if
Yeah.
someone's music really means a lot to me, I would just want to wait until I could meet them organically to, tell them how I feel,
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
just, because I think that makes it a little bit more special. And I wouldn't want to ruin the moment for myself or for them by being like, "Oh, howdy,"
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm certainly not like the coolest guy in the world. I'm
Oh,
probably
I
like
mean,
it. I
don't sell yourself
probably
too short there.
well, there's no, yeah, I'm not competing in the cool guy Olympics,
Wow.
but I certainly could probably annoy some artists by going up and being like, "Oh my God," you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, even doing this podcast, I feel like you know, I get to talk to a lot of like my friends, and that's great. And then I've tossed some Hail Marys out there, and gotten responses, and just been like,
Oh, cool.
okay, cool. Don't fanboy out too hard. And I feel like I've done like pretty good, with the exception of Rocky Vadalato, who I just interviewed.
Oh, cool.
I couldn't help it like a couple of times. I was just like, all right, so like this record was really important to me, but but anyway, let's just move on.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah.
When did you interview him?
Last week it actually was it was Friday's episode.
Cool.
It was gonna be your episode,
Oh, right.
but so you're the next week's. But yeah, Rocky was
Yeah, you gotta wait for the party,
yeah, that's right. Gotta keep him waiting.
He's a Seattle guy, isn't he?
He is a Seattle guy. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I think I met him once or twice he used to come into the music store that I worked at.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, very nice guy.
He's a sweetheart. Yeah, him and Damian Gerardo were on the show, and they're both Seattle guys.
Now you got 3.
Now I got 3. I gotta collect them all.
I guess I'm a former Seattle guy. I'm still Seattle on the inside, but
Yeah, I mean,
physically I'm here in Los Angeles.
yes, absolutely, which is great.
No
But
better
yeah,
place to be.
we'll consider you like point five.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
2.5 Seattle guys.
That's cool.
But anyway, so that brings me to Modern Pressure specifically. And we've already touched on Modern Pressure a little bit, but like, why specifically was this album the one that you were like, you got to check this one out?
Well, I think namely it's the most accessible just because it's on the streaming platforms.
Sure.
But I do think that it's the most succinct. I think it's the most succinct version of that thing about Daniel Romano that I really love, which is that sort of country rock psychedelia thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was his probably his best attempt at doing that thing that he wanted to do. And I think therefore it is like the most kind of succinct version of that. And so just because it's right there and it's like, this is the thing that he did. And he sort of dropped this thing, which is this great idea that he had, this sort of like rebranding of his sound or whatever. And from there, like his whole kind of vibe shifted and branched off. And I think it's a really cool branching off point because you can see like where he veered from the thing that he was doing before into the thing that he's doing now, even down to kind of his vocal style. Like he sort of changed his singing, like the way that he sung between Mosey and Finally Free. I think that was only a span of like 2 years.
Yeah.
And he kind of shifted into this new thing. And we talked about this before, but it was like he kind of started focusing more on this like kind of sort of Bob Dylan-y like sound with his voice and like a little bit more of a psychedelic sort of later Beatles-y style of production.
Yeah.
But with sort of like a Paul McCartney like influence there because of like the production, like the way that he did the production, like
Definitely.
him running the show, playing all the instruments. Like I just think that because it was sort of his first time like doing that he released it like as a solo project. I think that's kind of the perfect branching off point, because then if you like Modern Pressure, you'll love Content to Point the Way. You'll love Dandelion. You'll love Visions of the Higher Dream
Yeah.
and Kissing the Foe and all the other ones that he put out on Bandcamp. So it's like you will then take the time to go to Bandcamp if you really want to hear it. But it's like
You will.
And then you'll also listen to Finally Free too, because it's right there. It's the next installment.
Yes.
And
it does make sense to me as like a follow-up to Modern Pressure. Finally Free.
It does to me too. And in fact, I love so much about that record. Especially, I love the way he produced that record he did like one mic in the middle of the room and played all the instruments. He didn't move the mic, but he played the instruments around the mic.
That's so cool.
And then mixed like the room basically.
Yeah.
And that's just such a cool idea. Like, who does interesting things like that anymore? Like, I do know a few, like, I mean, I've met a lot of really cool people here in LA, and I do know a few engineers that would be like down to try something like that, but it's not every day that you hear people doing something so specific and focused. But I think Modern Pressure though just has some of the best songs. Like some of his best songs are on that. Like I think When I Learned Your Name is an unbelievable song.
Oh man.
Impossible Green is so cool. And then the last song is What's to Become of the Meaning of Love.
Yes.
And
man.
I love the way that song ends. Like I mentioned this before, like all of his records, the last song is always the best song. It's like he just really knows how to put a bow on the whole thing. And there's something I love about if a song has a good ending, it's sort of hilarious to me. Like I love songs, but I even love it more when they finish correctly. When they I just love a really good ending because like if the ending's really good, you might just be like, I'm just gonna listen to that again.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if it's
like,
at the end of an album too, and it ends the right way. You're just like, oh damn.
Yeah, it's like the final piece of the puzzle. The last thing that I'm gonna say to you is this.
Yeah.
And I think I can just tell that is really important to him because every song or every final song of each record is like
you're consistent
really
with that too because you brought
such
up
a cool thing.
You brought up Paper Rose before, and that's the last song on Visions of a Higher Dream.
Paper Rose, yeah. The Patience of a Kiss, I think, is the last one on Dandelion. That one's a really kind of spooky, weird one, like which I love. I love that. And that one sort of leaves you kind of wanting more. And it's oh man, it's just takes a special kind of person, I think, to want to devote that much effort into like making a really solid statement.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, it's like it's wild how like cohesively those Bandcamp albums are, or like how cohesive they are, because they really do feel like entire statements, each one.
Yeah.
And they're like, put out as like the archives, whatever. But like those are just full-fledged records that are just great. I don't know. Yeah. I'm baffled by it.
I mean, and I do like, I would love for him. I wish that they were on streaming just so they were easier to share with people. But I don't wish that because I first of all, I want him to get paid. I want people to buy his music.
Yes.
I've bought every record that he's put out since Modern Pressure.
Yeah.
But like, I don't, so I wouldn't want him to put them on streaming just because I feel like, but I just think more people should listen to him, should hear how amazing he is. But I also am glad that they're not on streaming just because it feels kind of like an insider's club sometimes when when you go to his Bandcamp and you check stuff out and you're like, dude, this is so cool. It's like, I think his following has grown since I've gotten into him, but like especially during COVID, I was like, it almost kind of like selfishly, I was like, man, it's almost like these records are just for me,
Yeah.
It was, very, very special.
For sure. No, I feel like I even think like last year was a pretty big year for him because Too Hot to Sleep came out.
Yeah.
And that was a huge, that showed up in my Apple Music recommendations and everything too. Like that's
cool.
It was a big one. And I remember listening to it because that same group thread that I was talking to you about, like, sent it through, and I listened to it being like, "Whoa, this is like wild," because it's a really weird record for him.
Totally.
It's kind of punk rock at times, and like it's It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, yeah, with his band, like he started doing his records, like his full releases, doing like full records with his live band.
Yeah.
And their energy is like crazy.
It's
And
nuts.
that was the thing too that I love. I mean, not to tangent, but
No.
like hearing his records and loving the production of them and loving the ideas, to then going and seeing him live, and he plays his songs completely differently than the record, because it's like you can't recreate what you did on this thing. So he takes his live band, it's just like some of Canada's rippingest, and like just like melts your face off with these songs that you already love, but they're sort of like reimagined to be this really high energy thing, and doesn't take any time between songs to be like, thanks everyone, I'm Daniel Romano. Like, just fucking like gets on stage and goes bah for like an hour and a half, like no stops.
Yeah.
The only time he ever spoke was to like introduce the band, like, which he did like very graciously. And it's like, but other than that, there was no kind of bullshit. No, like, just, like, thanks for coming to my show. It's so cool to be here in LA, like none of that. And I think his new records are cool because they really capture that band's, like, that energy is unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah. Oh,
and
man.
It's his brother that plays drums, and he's like,
That's right.
Ian is like a crazy, crazy drummer. He's so good.
Yeah.
The whole band is amazing.
They're incredible. Yeah. I remember when I was doing my like initial research for our episode, I usually like to look up some live videos and stuff like that and interviews and stuff. In all of the interviews, first off, like he's a pretty funny dude. Like he's like,
Yeah.
he's just like deeply unserious a lot of the time. And it's great. Like it's really great.
Love that.
Makes for an interesting interview. But the live videos that I saw were always like the opposite of what I was expecting. Like it really was just full bore, this like, oh my God, like cranked, fast, aggressive. And like his music isn't always like that.
No. They're like pretty loud. Like the show is super loud.
Yeah.
And pretty high energy.
Yeah, it's great.
I have not seen him since. It's been a while since I've seen him. He came back to LA about 2 years ago, and I did not go because I had just come home from tour, and I just could not like imagine myself going to a concert, which I regret because I feel like I should see every show that he plays.
Sure.
But I did see him at Zebulon, and that was with his older band that he's no longer touring with. He's got a different group of people now, but it was like 5 or 6 pieces, and just like, it was just fun. It was just really, really fun. And the interaction with the crowd was really cool. And it was different. The first time I saw him was in Seattle when I was living there, and nobody was at the show. It was like me and like maybe like, not nobody, but there was like maybe 40 people there in like a 300 person venue.
Yeah. And that feels empty.
And it was pretty empty. And I could tell that he didn't like really make it clear, but I could tell he was just kind of like, I got to get through this show. But instead of kind of like half-assing it, he like kind of did it more and like intensely. He kind of was like, just like, ugh, and just really, really rocked it. And my friend and I, who's like my other buddy in Seattle, who's like obsessed with Daniel Romano too, like we knew all the words to all the songs, and we're like, whoa. And I wanted to say what up to him after, but he just kind of left, and I think he was just like,
sure,
screw this place, I don't want to be here. But we talked to his guitar player, and his guitar player was like, how, you get like, what's up with you guys? Like, you guys know all the songs? Like, we were like, yeah, we're big fans.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good. But that band is, I mean, hopefully next time he's in town, we should go see him, because
I would love to.
It's really unbelievable.
Yeah, hopefully he can, without getting too political. Hopefully that's like a thing that you can do.
That's right.
And
I got so deep into talking about my favorite artist that I forgot that
he's Canadian.
No, I just forgot that shit's so stupid right now.
Yeah. Oh God.
It took me out of reality for a second. So thank you for this.
Yeah. No, these interviews have been a blessing for me in this time as well. So
that's cool, man.
I'm really glad that you wanted to talk about some tunes, and
of course, man.
we are right at about the end of our time, but before we go, and I know that you did this before, but we've had some time to marinate in it. So like if you could pick 3 Daniel Romano albums that people need to hear, or if you could rank them, that would be even better, but no, it's not necessary.
Don't know if I could rank them.
Yeah, that's okay.
But the three that I think are my favorites that I would make people listen to, if I could make them do anything, is Modern Pressure, Dandelion, and Content to Point the Way.
All right.
All three of which we talked about. But
those are the ones.
Honorable mention to I'm blanking on the name. Sleep Beneath the Willow.
Oh yeah! Oh, that
really
record is
one.
great.
And any of those records too, any of those country records from a few years ago are worth listening to. But those 3, I think, Modern Pressure is on streaming, and then the other 2 are on Bandcamp. So
and they're worth.
Then, you got to check out Finally Free too. I mean, I like. The answer is everyone basically, but those 3 I think are my favorites, just specifically.
Yeah, for sure. Well, great. Yeah. And like for the record, the Bandcamp records are so worth the journey for anybody who is willing to like, just open the browser, move their thumb a couple extra times and open a browser and open up Bandcamp. Because my God, those albums are perfect. They're just so good. So
yeah, they're the best.
Yeah. All right, man. Well,
thank you, man, for having me.
Oh my gosh, thanks for coming back. And,
of course. And thank you to Daniel Romano for the amazing music. Huge fan. Love him very much.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Thanks. Bye.
Cool, buddy. Thank you.